Hello. G'day everyone. If you could move on in here, take a seat, please. We'll kick this thing off. Thank you. Sometimes it's good to have a big voice. Thank you, Lee. Come on over the left-hand side, plenty of seats over here. They're filling up on the right. Well, my left, my right. Right, should we do this? You showed up, hooray! I'm always surprised when people show up. Thanks for coming. We didn't have a Canterbury Tech monthly event last month because we held an event during Tech Week at the end of May. So great to see so many of you here tonight. I think we had about 190 registrations. I'm sure we've got quite a few no-shows. Who cares? You showed up. Thank you. And hello to our online audience. We'll try not to forget you. This is projected rather weirdly at the back of the room as well. So if your eyesight, like mine, is not very good and you're sitting at the back and you want to see the little font, turn around. That's a bit awkward, but it's the way it is. So here's what we're going to do. The usual welcome, health and safety, a bit of talking from me. I'll try and keep it short. I'm Neil Hamilton from Canterbury Tech, for those that don't know me. Then we're going to welcome Lisa Nix from Fusion 5 and Bryn Lewis. And after that, please stick around, mingle a bit further. We're going to do some talking for about an hour. And then please do some more networking and go home when you're ready to. Thank you to our venue host for the evening. Nigel, where are you, Nigel? You're somewhere. Oh, there he is. Nigel Young and the crew at ARA. Much appreciated use of the space. And I think now's a good time for me to say the few words about how to get out of the place. So in the case of emergency, you do not go down the main stairs that you probably came up. There is a smoke screen that descends in the event of fire. So instead, follow the little green man at either end of the room. There are other exits in the case of emergency. There are also toilets at both ends of the room, and the designated assembly point is in the car park, which is over that way. Or is it over that way? Nigel, help. It's that way, isn't it? Yeah, there's car parks everywhere. Don't use the lifts. Duh. Anything? Did I miss anything? Nigel, I'm looking at you. No, we're good. Okay. That's the health and safety. So, welcome. What have I got here? And we're delighted to welcome our latest cluster sponsor. Cluster sponsors cough up a bit of cash to support the efforts of Canterbury Tech through a 12-month period, and our latest cluster sponsor is AWS. Have I seen Casey Gordon? Casey, my man.
Sick, so I decided not to show you guys.
Casey is based in Auckland, but he's down here. I'm sorry, based in Wellington, down in Christchurch quite regularly. So if you want to talk about AWS, talk to Casey. We have a bunch of new members. I'll quickly rattle through the company and individual members and look for a show of hands. CouchDrop, Nitro Labs, iClick, Ed Potential. Who's in the room? Hooray, welcome. Thanks for signing up. We value you joining us. And individual members, Felicia, Guyan, Graham, Jason, who's here? Only one. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go through the big list of new student joiners. We have, I think at the last count, about 250 student members, so welcome to you all. Everybody new in the room, stick your hand up. New to Canterbury Tech, stick your hand up. Everybody else that's regulars, be nice to these people. Go talk to them. Make them feel welcome. So a few things to rattle through. The Epic podcast, if you're into podcasts about technology, sign up for this. You'll find it through the usual podcast channels. We also put it on our website. There's the link at the bottom there. A couple of apps, recent apps that are live. There they are. There's another couple about to go out. I won't tell you about them. We'll make a bit of a splash on social media when we put them out. So there'll be a few more of these over the coming months. So they're generally speaking, the stories about local technology companies that aren't particularly well known, and we're looking to profile them and improve the understanding of the tech community, but also the general population about what's going on in tech in Canterbury. So please have a listen. And we also put written case studies up on our website for people that prefer to consume it that way. Rattle through these three. It's awards season. Hooray! No sooner is the High Tech Awards out the way than you've got a bunch of new ones. So the New Zealand Business Awards. Sequent won this a couple of years ago, something like that. So well worth entering. Brought to you by NZT. There you are, Lyle. I'm looking at you. Talk to Lyle. I've just dobbed you in. What else we got? Deloitte Fast 50, very popular, been running a long time. Entries now open until the end of the month. Take a look. And more locally, the Westpac Champion Business Awards. Again, according to me, Friday the 23rd of July. So what can I say? It is award season. Well worth entering these things. Okay, I'll spill the beans. We did a podcast episode earlier today with Julie from Custom D. They were our Canterbury winner at the High Tech Awards this year. So she had really good things to say about the process of entering and the benefits that they've seen from entering. So it doesn't have to be the High Tech Awards. Take a look at these things. It's really good practice to help figure out what your business actually does and why you can rise above the competition. So there's three there, three different types of awards you can consider. Moving on, the Tech Summit. Nice graphics. What do you think of the graphics? Ooh, yeah, good. I like them. Thursday the 2nd of September, early bird member tickets now on sale, only until Monday. After that, it'll be our normal pricing. So only available to members at the moment. From Monday, standard member tickets and non-member tickets and student tickets will be available. Some really good speakers, I like to think. Here's some of them. There are others that we're on the cusp of confirming, and a few others we haven't published yet. So we'll do that annoying thing of dribbling that out over the next couple of weeks or so to tease you into buying your tickets. Yeah, let's be honest, that's what we do. And sponsors are really important to any conference like this. Jade is our platinum sponsor this year, thanks to them, but thanks to all of you, and I know some people from several of these companies are in the room, so thanks to all of you for your support. It is, as usual, going to be the highlight of the calendar year for the tech sector in Canterbury, at least, if not New Zealand, the same height. Good speaker program, brilliant networking opportunities, come along. It's a full day affair. You don't have to come for the full day, but feedback is always really good, and it will be this year too. A few other things going on. The digital equity space is, it's kind of busy but very fragmented, would be my view. So this is happening this week on Thursday, and might be worth you checking out if you have an interest in digital equity, which we all should in one form or another. Other things going on, another conference. Our friends at IT Professionals, where's Steve? We had a chat earlier, there's Steve. Look, I'm singling people out in the audience. If you want to know more about ITX, this is brought to you by IT Professionals, and there is a discount for Canterbury Tech members. There's the details at the bottom. If you forget them, then email us. Good program, it's on at the end of the month. So no clash with Tech Summit, and no excuses not to come to both, really. A few other things going on. I think I mentioned most of these, but Space for Planet Earth Challenge, that's space base. There's some reasonable prizes up for offer there. Competition is open to New Zealand, Australia, and Pacific Island residents at high school and university or startup level. And Southern SAS gets a really good review from everyone that goes. So if you're in the SAS space, take a look at it. I think it always sells out, so you might want to get tickets early if you're in that, if that's of interest. And we've publicised this by other means. There's a critical workers survey. This is really about tech employers. Get your employer hat on. And, you know, I do hear regularly it's difficult for tech companies to find talent, as we call it these days, aka people. So if that's something that you have a keen interest in, you're having problems in this area, please fill in the survey. That survey may or may not influence government decisions, so have a say. And now, here is where I refer to the bit of paper. Lisa, where are you? There she is. Lisa is General Manager of Sales at Fusion 5, having over 28 years of business applications sales experience from New Zealand and working for 6 years in Silicon Valley. Lisa's passion is still to walk around factories and warehouses where she can witness the day-to-day running of each company she's involved with. And I think I'll stop there. The topic is giving back and why it's good for business. And I'm going to hand over to you, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Perfect. So my topic I chose to inspire you with is around giving back, and then I thought, okay, let's actually relate it to business, and so it's like giving back and why it's good for business. And the reason why I chose this topic was because I adamant that us experienced people, aka oldies, have actually got a civic duty to hand back some of our time. Now, I've never had the chance to retire and go work on a charity and be a foundation member or go play tennis and yoga or anything like that. I did try retiring once, then I got married, had a child and had to go back to working again. So I'm passionate about giving back my time. Now, I have no time, but that's what I can contribute. So this is what I'm not going to be challenging you with. I just want you to be considering some of the messaging that I'm presenting to you today around what giving back and why that could potentially be good for your business. So this is me, 30 years ERP. So enterprise resource planning, like I said, I love walking around factories. I can go in and talk about process manufacturing, discrete manufacturing, professional services companies, wholesale distribution. It's in my veins. It's what I've done for years and years and years, and I just absolutely love it. With Fusion 5 as an organisation, I started with the company 16 years ago. I was hired to be the first salesperson when we had, I think, less than 16 people. We're now 500 people, and now I'm the manager of over 20 people in the sales team across New Zealand, and I'm responsible for 450 customers. So it's a big job, and I have no time. I looked at my calendar this week. I have 6 hours this week that's not scheduled. And it's really not good for the books of our company, but I have close to 700 hours of leave that I need to take. Really not good. But I am adamant that I have to find time to carve out for the good of the next generation. And as a nod to the Women in Technology here, I've been to Women in Technology courses and Women in Business events as well. I'm an advocate and sponsor for them as well. And I know that the messaging previously has been around, keeping the elevator doors open, lending the hand, opening up your hand, lending it. And that's my message to you guys, is what are you doing to open up your time and lend a hand to the next generation? But again, thinking about business is, what are you doing to think about the next generation, and have you got a business strategy to talk about the next leaders for your business today? And is leader strategy part of your business organisation? So it's sort of those two messages around opening the doors, making yourself available, lending the hand, and how does that actually imply for business strategy? And coming back to our corporate world, I think haven't been exposed to this in the legal profession, but they talk about pro bono work, and I'm going, well, what are we actually doing in the corporate world to think about our community activities, and perhaps even how does that become applicable? I'm presenting this because this is my journey. Now, I present this for one reason. I've got an 18-year-old son who's at university, and I'm adamantly trying not to say, and what do you want to do when you grow up? Who here in this room, doing what you do today, the tasks you do, the role that you do, your day-to-day activities, ever thought that you'd be doing this when you're an 18 to 20-something-year-old? And this is the kind of thing I'm saying, what are you doing to expose yourself to the younger generation to say, hey, look, this is what our world looks like. This is what I do. This is what business is. This is why I get up and go to work today. This is what I need to do on my daily tasks. These are my activities. These are my, this is the parts of my process that I have to run within my work world. Because I can tell you, these people, these 18, 20-year-olds, don't have any clue what life looks like. I mean, we say go off and get a degree, or go follow your passion. It's like, you're lucky if you can. My journey was I followed my neighbour. So I had no clue. My neighbour went off and applied for a cadetship, travel management cadetship. There was something in me. I've obviously always been in sales. Get up and talk to everybody. I'll network with everyone, have a drink with anyone. But it was a cadetship that 100 people applied for, and they hired 6 people. Great thing to think about from a cadetship, what we talk about graduate programs today. Every 6 months I was moving operations within the company. As a travel operations, I never once did a travel booking, but as a travel management I got to figure out what the business looked like from every different angle, and it was the one paper I got an A+ in computer degree, so I said, okay, I can get this, it sort of makes sense. And we're on an old Wang VS system, so they said, okay, you come along and we're doing an upgrade to their latest Wang on mainframe system. So I said, yeah, I can do this. I can kind of understand what the business wants, and so the operations work, and I can kind of understand what the computer system can do. Literally, I came out of the cadetship, I was systems operations person. My job was to take the printout that was that high, the dot matrix printer and rip them off and hand them around and run them around to the business and try and talk about what kind of reporting we could get for the business. It was just my journey. I then went overseas as a New Zealander and did my big OE, went to London and worked for an advertising company. Again, no experience, but the great thing about working in London as a Kiwi, they just give you a chance. And so I was working on an ICL mainframe and doing their systems support. And I was saying, hello, my name's Dorothy, and can you do my backup? And I lost all her data. But I thought I had absolutely made it because I was running around with a soldering iron in my briefcase, and I was making printer cables between those 25-pin female-male printer cables with a soldering iron. And I had to learn, it was before WordPerfect, I had to learn like Word and go find, they were called secretaries, and go find out what the secretaries wanted, go learn a software, then try and actually teach them like Control-V, Control-P, it's like, highlighting stuff, because I just gave it a go. No grand plans, just gave it a crack, Nigel. So, and this is what I talk about with my journey. I came back from overseas, I was given a chance to go work at Oracle Corporation, worked for them in New Zealand, real boys club back then. I was in the sales, I was the national sales manager, I managed myself. I went to the managing director, I said I made my numbers, and he said, well done, young lad. And I said, okay, where else can I go? So I looked online, went overseas, went to Oracle in the US. Sales there was a machine. So you walk in and there's a screen there, you're one of 200 people on this, and your targets, real time, minute by minute, were on the board as you walked in, and you did not want to be at the bottom of that list. So I excelled in that because, oh, you're that cute girl with the accent, I want to buy some tools and database. It's like, yeah. And I loved it. I loved that environment, but it was great grounding. But I also learned who I didn't want to be. I came back after 6 years to get my hands back in the soil. Then at Fusion 5, came in, as I said, the first salesperson there. And when I was offered the role to become the general manager, I interviewed the CEO and I said, look, the only way I can treat this is how I'd actually treat a profiling of an opportunity. And I went to the CEO and I said, what's goodness look like? What's the remit of the job? How do I know I'm doing a good job? And I've boiled it down to my job is to win business, keep customers happy, add value to the customers, and look after my team. So if I can really instill those things, it actually helps me understand my journey. The reason why I put this up here is I gave this presentation last week to the Academy of Global Ventures, a group in America who've got 50 students. 2 years ago, they travelled the world and they came to New Zealand. They took them around Australia and New Zealand businesses and I met them. This year I did it online. I don't have time, but I did this presentation to them to say, follow your nose, or actually I used better words. I said, no, follow the opportunity, look for the opportunity. Don't worry about too much your destiny, give it a go, try new adventures, and make sure you connect. And I talked a lot about the difference in selling and culture between New Zealand and Australia. But this is a presentation that I chose to give to these students this week. I'm also working with, there was a Massey University student out of Auckland who said, hey, I'm doing a degree on ERP for SMB, can you come and help me? So I said, yeah, sure, send me through your questions. And oh my God, there was 200 of them. So let's start. And I said, I want to get in front of your customers. I said, no, you're not. So let's actually help them. So these are things, again, that I think that we're stewards of the industry, of what we do. We're good at this. What are we doing to think about the next generation? I put this up. Anyone have any clue where this is?
Yeah.
Yep.
Way up north.
Yep, way up north. This is Bland Bay. I put this up. I am privileged that this is where my grandparents moved to, out of Auckland, and moved up there in the early 70s, no electricities, wild horses roaming up and down the road. The local Maori were embraced my grandparents, who became very well respected members of the community. And I sort of put this up here, one key message. What if we think about, instead of the business that we do today, of going, this is my job and it's all about profitability and numbers, if we think about stewards of the next generation. So my father handed this property over to me and said, this is yours, do not sell it in my lifetime. And I've done the same thing with my son. I said, this property is yours, do not sell it in my lifetime. So putting it in the context of business, what if we are custodians for the next generation? That was just a message there. Giving back, to me, means more than just sponsorship. So a lot of organisations do fantastic things to promote their brand for the good of the community. The netball, the rugby, we ourselves, Fusion 5, we sponsor Lewis Claiborne and Eric Fairweather, who are now going to the Olympic swimmers. So up and coming talent, we invest in them, we sponsor them. We also sponsor rhinos in South Africa. What I'm talking about is not just a sponsorship for the community, but thinking about what are we doing to build a generation of the next leaders for our organisation. Now, I walk into companies and I look at annual reports and I have many conversations around I need to improve my profitability, my cash flow. I've got organisations that talk about I want to build up greater efficiency, or their data management needs to be improved. They want to have forward-looking more budgeting and forecasting. They want better reporting or data sovereignty or governance, or they want to improve margins. Everything is around the numbers, their shareholder responsibility. I haven't seen an annual report that actually talks about the diligence of what they're doing to build up for the next generation, for their business, around that custodian for the next generation of leaders. And I don't know if it's something that your company talks about or not, but it's something that I'm starting to see a little bit more of going, we're having, in our industry, around professional services, because of COVID, we're finding it really hard to get new talent into the country. I was just saying that the cost to our business and recruitment fees has skyrocketed because our competitors are all stealing. I won't mention that yellow company that's in the room, but we're all stealing each other's staff, and their recruitment fees are going up. We cannot find the talent in the country. We're trying to get the people to come in offshore. So what are we doing to build and invest in talent? And there's some, I just want to talk through some of the programs that we're doing. So the first thing I wanted to say is, it's coffee time, it didn't present up the same way. So I challenge you. So what are you doing to make yourself available for those 30-minute coffee conversations? So this is what I said to the graduates, and it's interesting to see you've got so many students in your membership list here. So I say to students, go follow the people who you admire. Who's out there that you want to go and find out what do they do? You don't know what they do. What is it? How did they get there? What was their journey? What can they talk about to help you in your career? How can they connect you? And so I say to you, find that 30-minute for you to make time for those coffee meetings, to lend a hand for that next generation, that emerging generation, fostering them to give them exposure of what we do, what's behind our closed doors. Fusion 5, we run a graduate program of saying we can't find the talent, so we have to build it. And same thing is that we'll put people through speed dating. We'll get 200 people coming in, we'll speed date them through the general managers, and we'll look for that X factor people. So we'll bring in 10 to 15 people every year who have basically, they're smart cookies. They can't do the job. They've got no idea how to do business applications and consulting implementation. They don't know how to be a consultant, but man, are they sharp. They have got it. Every year we have our conference, so we're about 500 people. I've got about 270 staff in New Zealand. We'll have a big, huge conference. Jeremy Colbert often hosts it. We'll put them up on stage, day one, first day on the job, and we'll interview them, and they are just onto it. They've so much enthusiasm and talent. They're multifaceted and multidimensional. They've just got something, and we have to invest in a graduate program. Now, it's really interesting because it's one or two things. We know today in the industry that there's the 5 generations. We've got the Gen X, Gen Ys, millennials, etc., and we have to actually work with the different generations to come up with different initiatives. These great emerging talent people will either go, that's great, you've invested in me, you've spent all this time on me, you've now made me viable, I'm off to do the next thing. So they're off chasing the stars, or off, no longer traveling the world, but they're off doing the next thing. Or they build up loyalty with your organisation. There's no magic button here. It doesn't always build loyalty. But it's really interesting to see around some of the programs you can put in place to bring in emerging talent. It's a huge investment you've got to put into it. The other part of it is the forward-thinking leadership team. So at Fusion 5, actually one of our, I won't call her out, but one of our staff said, well, I'm a young generation. Fusion 5, what are you going to do for me? I want mentorship. I want to see the leadership quality. So we created a junior leadership team. Now I'm on the SLT and we meet twice a week. So what does the SLT talk about? What do we care about? What keeps us awake at night? How do we manage our business? Now we're 120 million. I want to grow to 200 million. I want to grow to 500 million. How am I going to do that? So under the junior leadership team, we're saying to them, here's open kimono. Here's what we talk about. Here's how we run a business. Here's what's on the mind of a CEO. Here's the thoughts that we're thinking about taking. What do you think? What companies should we acquire? Where should we go? What services should we offer our customers? It's a huge investment, but we're trying to embrace the junior leadership team to be that next emerging talent of young junior leaders. The support is very much around looking for the internal opportunity. We have staff who have come into our organisation, and whether it's receptionist or into our accounts department, we've got people who are now general managers and running the business all over the place. So it almost reminds me of the cadetship program that I went. So you've got to be able to look and go, that person's got talent. Don't keep them there. Move them on, move them up, move them around. Think about that, what a graduate program or cadetship program could look like if they've got an opportunity to get across your organisation. So we've done that. Our staff had the ability to move up and around very, very quickly within our organisation. It's quite surprising. You cannot just say that that's what they're hired to do if they're the right kind of people to come into the organisation. The other thing that I talk about here is the wellness and check-in. So one of the things that I'm not an HR expert, but we've changed our HR approach because we know we've got all these different generations and we've got people who are going, look, I just want to come in, I'm really good at what I do, just let me get on with it, versus the people who are going, tell me about my career path, what can you do for my organisation, what are you going to do to manage me, what programs are you going to put in place with me. Now we used to be quite structured and say, right, twice a year, everyone get in a room, scorecard them, who gets promotions, who gets title increases, pay increases. We said, it doesn't work, it was too bureaucratic, too come in, tick a box. So we've said, okay, now we need to connect with our staff and actually talk to them on a regular basis, like every couple of weeks or every month, and just go, what's going on? What are we doing? So that whole wellness check-in has changed, and we changed quite a bit under COVID as well. But it's interesting around we're changing the conversation not so much around, are you doing a good job, but what can I be doing for you? And that's actually quite interesting for me. I'm going, well, am I a good manager? I have to ask my staff that. I'm going, am I doing a good job? What more can I be doing for you? So this whole way that we do career development is really important as well, part of my giving back. And the connecting from my side is that, again, I have no time. I'm making myself available for coffee meetings, but I really want to make sure that I offer my time, my expertise for connecting. Now, I'm really good at conversations around what's happening in business applications and ERP, and I've been in this world offering business applications for a long time. So what I want to do is get out there and talk to the organisations who are talking to companies like yourself, so the search and selection companies or the advisory organisations or even your accountants or your auditors. Because I walked into a company the other day and said, oh look, I've got a customer, they're thinking of doing this. And they're thinking of doing this, I'm going, well, A, if you go on premise, I'll shoot you. But B, if you're thinking about these systems, I mean, those systems are out of date. There's no support in New Zealand. So I'll talk openly about my competition, about what's going on in the market, who's bought what recently. Because this company, they didn't know. And they were sitting there scribbling all these notes, going, oh, wow, that's amazing. But it's just, I've got to offer up my time to help other organisations, to help them help customers. So that's really what my theme was, is very much around what can we be doing to help the upcoming generation, to put leadership in your organisation, to be custodians of the business, and really just achieving some lifetime employees to build up some of that loyalty. That's what I want to talk about. Any questions? I'm open.
Questions? Mike, please. You're going to have to talk really loudly.
So thank you very much for the presentation. Very nice, and this is great. I assume the company is quite supportive of your thoughts and your actions. Otherwise, do you think that would have been possible? Well, it's easily possible.
So the question was, is my company supportive of my actions?
Well, no, I was just saying that obviously your company is quite supportive. If you think that the company was not as supportive and they thought that what you're sharing might somehow be giving an advantage to other groups or competitors and all that, I suppose wouldn't have been as easy.
Yeah, sure, I get the question. And that's quite interesting because we used to very much protect our IP and our difference and our secret sauce, and we're going completely the other way. Particularly, in this world of I want to buy a business application or CRM or HR and payroll or ERP. All of this information, we're actually trying to make ourselves more visible on the web, and putting the information out there to help customers actually. I mean, one of my team here today out of the Christchurch office was saying he's going to do a whole series of videos around what's it going to take to buy an ERP, and it's actually going the other way. We have to open up ourselves to be more viable and be more useful for the market. So I don't think we do ourselves any favour by trying to hold off and go, we really come to us and come talk to us because we know something that you don't. We want you to come and talk to us.
Who else?
Yes.
Stick your hand up. There's one. Hang on, Mike coming.
Hi, what's your global reach? What's Fusion 5? How far over the globe do you know?
Fusion 5 is a New Zealand Australian organisation, so we've got offices in New Zealand and Australia, so 500 employees. But we do projects, global rollout projects. So we've got a whole lot of large international customers that will do. I mean, we've done projects in China, so you have to deal with the global tax. We've done projects in Russia, so we have to do international rollout projects.
Thanks.
That's right.
Another one. Come on, don't be shy. Rare opportunity, take it up.
That's right.
Person that's really difficult to get the mic to, never mind.
I was reading a paper about the other day about inside leadership looking outwards and making sure they have inspiration from people, other organisations. Is that something you encourage, or do you believe that inward-looking focus is always?
Rephrase the question a bit more, Rose.
Do you encourage your future leaders to look out and develop their ideas from outside your organisation, or do you solely focus inside and keep them?
I don't think we've asked them to do that. I don't think that's the way we've specifically angled it. What I think we've realised is just because we're the SLT and we're the old guard doesn't mean that we know everything. And that's the change that we're trying to go through, is going, we need fresh ideas, we need fresh perspectives. So that's what we'll, it may be hit or miss, sometimes it could come through as a bit rudimentary, or going, okay, well that's great, but then, CEO should go and talk to customers more and say, yeah, okay, great, thanks for that. But it's just making yourself a little bit vulnerable of going, how do we actually take those next steps of coming up with new ideas and fresh ideas that we might not be thinking about? How we get those ideas and how we're challenging the JLT or our resources. It's just continuing. We're just continuing trying to come up with new ideas.
Okay, one more, and I'm looking for a question from one of the women in the audience. We've had 3 questions from 3 boys. What's up with that?
You talk about your junior leadership team. How do you identify members of that team? Is it by age? Is it by length of time in their position?
Could I actually challenge Stacey to answer that? Would you like to? Stacey is with Fusion 5 and she's in our JLT.
Hello. I'll stand up. So essentially it's just like an application process. So you write why you'd like to be on the JLT, I'm 31, so I'm definitely not at the younger end of the JLT. And you just write why you think you could be on JLT and what you could bring to Fusion 5. And then they sort of go for a selection process. They were sort of inundated with applications, so what they did actually create as well was a junior ops team. So that was then like another level down of people that are more focused on initiatives. We've got a green initiative at Fusion 5 at the moment where they're going around looking at what our recycling does and how we better support our offices, and then they'll eventually move into JLT, talking at a more strategic level. Yeah, come work for Fusion 5.
Well, look, thank you. I'm going to call it there because we've got another speaker tonight. Thanks so much to Lisa.
I hope that was somewhat, I said, benefits inspiring. Thank you very much.
Bryn. Well, what can I say about Bryn? Fingers in many pies. He's got some proper work, and then he's got his passion stuff, I think. So I'll do a bit of reading. Bryn's a maker, husband and father of two. He builds stuff, breaks stuff, and says he makes up for a lack of talent with persistence. Bryn's going to talk about one person's attempt to address the gender imbalance in tech, and I'll keep it at that. Over to you, Bryn.
I'm a contractor. I make money by selling my time. I build Azure apps, I work for a fintech, I do IoT apps, and I have so many side hustles, I've lost track of them. 7 or 8 years ago, I listened to podcasts a lot, and this one popped up on my playlist. It's a group of researchers talking about how the number of women in tech plummeted. And it sort of caught my attention because at that stage my daughter was getting into hard materials. She got a prize for being able to operate a laser cutter and things like that. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll listen to this. There was this graph which came with the presentation. It was the different professional roles that people exit university into. I was at university in 1984. So basically about there. It would have been a year earlier, but I went a bit feral in my first year. Awfully feral. One of the things they talked about in this presentation, or this podcast, was embedded knowledge and how people, when they got to university, needed to know some useful stuff. When I was at university, the class was roughly 50-50 when I started. By the end of my final year, there were 3, maybe 2 women left, and that was it. They were really rare. I went down, I did operations research. There was pretty good balance there. I did physics, no one at all. So this sort of stuck in my mind for a while. They had some ideas about what it was. They went and talked to both female and male students at US universities and tried to figure out what it was. There were some bad adverts and some even worse movies. The scary thing is I sort of remember that movie. I don't know. Maybe as a university student it wasn't me. There were adverts. About that time, Radio Shack and Altair were releasing the first home computers, and they were starting to gain some popularity, but the adverts were always with boys, nerdy boys clustered around a computer. They interviewed one woman and she said, oh yeah, we had a computer at home, it was great, but it was in my brother's bedroom and I had to ask for the key before I could go and use it. Problem was that these women got to university and they were stuffed. They basically didn't have the assumed knowledge that the male counterparts had. A long time ago, 6 or 7 years ago, one of my co-workers, his partner worked in the office at St Margaret's. And we were talking about setting up a code club. At that stage, I was involved in code club. I am no longer involved in code club. And he said, oh, come and talk to the principal. So I said, oh yeah, I'll have a chat. I bowled down and she said, oh, well, come for a tour of the school. Have you been here before? And my inner voice went, the incorrect answer is, when I was 16, I jumped over the fence and skinny dipped in your pool. No, wrong answer. Inner thoughts, keep that one quiet. So one of the things they talked about in the presentations was that young women needed good female role models. Problem. Couldn't find any. Balding middle-aged guy will have to do. Better than nothing. So this is how a class starts. Every year, I chuck a pile of stuff out on the table. Students have a look. They figure out what they want to do. We install tools on their laptops. They've got Macs. We get everything going. And then it begins. We build stuff. It's coding with a bit of electronics. It's fairly niche, but it works for me. I've got an electric skateboard. I should have bought it, but it's too big to fit in a taxi. It's hip high on me. It does 30 kilometres an hour. It's quite terrifying. I'm epileptic. I was talking to the neurosurgeon, and I said to the neurosurgeon, "Is this okay?" And he went, "Oh, I've never had that before, but don't worry, you'll drop like a sack of spuds." And I'm thinking waking up with my face all smashed up would be really good. One of my students had a NASA sticker on a laptop, and she was really interested in aviation. So after learning how to read the analog input, that's a PlayStation joystick on an Arduino Shield up there. On a modern fly-by-wire aircraft, they have a thing called a stick shaker, which is if you try and push the stick outside the dynamic envelope of the plane, it shakes. I've got some vibration motors. They're the little things that make your cell phone shake when you get a call. So she wrote some code, she read the position of the joystick, and if you pushed it too far, it would shake. It was basically learning about Boolean logic by stealth. She had to devise quite a complex Boolean expression and do some maths to work out when the joystick was too far. So it's a lot of what I do is basically taking what they learn in class and putting some context to it. At some schools, I've got kids who are Aggie. One of my students was playing around with this. I've got it over there. It's a moisture sensor for soil. You smack it in the soil and it produces a voltage somewhere between 0 and 5 volts, indicating how wet the soil is. Those come from Poland. They're the only ones I can find which will survive in New Zealand UV and don't cost a fortune. So what the student is doing here is measuring the output voltage. She's got it attached to a device and she's calibrating it, working out 0% is when the sensor is in the air, the soil is really dry. 100% it's plunged into water and the soil would be really saturated. She's mapping that to a percentage. So behind the scenes, that's actually some maths. It's y equals mx plus c. I used to use jumpers and breadboards, but now I use these sort of plug and play connectors because I fragged a lot of gear. And if you're funding it yourself, you don't want to blow up too many sensors. It's all about passion projects and hiding stuff. Up there on the end of the little wire is an accelerometer. And this is one of the students. I'm sorry about all the crap, there may be some swearing. Sorry about all the crap angles and the lack of focus and the fuzziness. I have to take the photos at an angle where I get no student faces in. It's just polite. There are even some students who have ticked a box that they don't, well, their parents have ticked a box. So I have to be really careful. Some schools I have to get a list of where I can and can't take photos. I also have a police check every year. I have a 0 hours contract, I have a many hours $0 contract with St Margaret's so that all the OSH paperwork is dealt to. Every school I get a police check. The people who do the police checks must be sick of the sight of me. I have a pre-scanned piece of paper with my passport and my driver's license on it. Because I'm epileptic, I'm not allowed to drive, but I'm allowed to keep my driver's license just because it's used as ID in so many places. So here we are calculating the pitch and roll of a sensor. It's basic maths, but it's trig. And students hate maths, but it's a great way of getting them to do some trig behind the scenes. Now, this was a very intense project. This student wanted to measure the power consumption of different appliances. So this is a current clamp. It goes round, or this one is a 10 amp current clamp. You clamp it around the phase wire of a power supply, and it produces 0 to 1 volts depending on how much power the device is using. And there we've got the student working out how to calculate the area under the curve to get the power. Off that side of the picture is some appliances from the kitchen of the school. And we've got a device here. It just measures the amount of power and converts it to dollars and cents in the Meridian day rate. So it was pretty good. I was really impressed. There's a surprising amount of maths there, and she got right into it. She figured it out. This student's parents were first responders, ambulance workers. So her project was, it's a bit crap, the image, but about there. There's a pulse rate monitor which clips onto your earlobe. Had a bit of a learning experience. If you've got PSDs, it doesn't work. So you end up putting it on the web of the hand. She wanted to calculate pulse rate, core temperature. I said, yep, core temperature's fine, we can do that. Pulse rate, a bit harder. So it started off with calculating the likely minimum and maximum pulse rates, then working out, initially she did it like, say, a nurse would, time for 15 seconds, count the number of pulses. Trouble was it took 15 seconds to get a pulse. The values were always stepped in 4, yada, 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 was bored with that. So she figured out that you could measure the time between individual heartbeats and from that reverse out to the beats per minute. That was good. Problem was then the pulse rate was changing too fast because there's a bit of variance on your heartbeats. So rolling average over the last 10 heartbeats, or she played around with it to get the most responsive and the most accurate readings. We had a steel-headed temperature sensor, and she wanted to do core temperature, and I suggested that was most probably not a good thing, particularly in a class. So she went and got some hot water. She boiled the jug, plunged it in the hot water, and then she went to stick it in her armpit. So teacher looks at me because I reach over and grab her by the wrist, and I'm thinking this is going to look so bad. Grab her by the wrist and say, hey, you can't do that. And then she went, oh, yeah, that would be bad. I visualised the amount of paperwork I would have to fill out. Could be measured in reams. Sometimes I bring along sensors which just lob a curveball in. This is an EMG sensor. This was on the pile of stuff on my desk, and I thought I'd take it along. Weird camera angle, slightly out of focus. It was such a teachable moment. Students got drink bottles and filled them with varying amounts of water because they knew a litre of water weighed a kg. And they were working out how much muscle activity and how it varied based upon what you were picking up. I don't have many of these. I have to import them from China, the little pads. It's the only way I can get ones which don't break the bank. I found out 5-6 years ago that I'm actually allergic to some of the glue on these, and I'm standing in front of a conference of 300 people talking about this, monitoring my pulse in real time, graphing it, and suddenly I had this allergic reaction and I had hives about the size of a coffee cup all up my arm, and they're itching like mad, which wasn't a good look. It's this sort of teachable moment that you use to convey the joy of coding and the joy of a bit of electronics. Sometimes you've got to riff off about what the students are talking about. These two students were having an argument about who was the loudest. As the person in the room, as the adult in the room. I actually always have a teacher in the far corner who's the adult supervision. I'm not an LAT. I haven't got a license, a limited authority to teach. I'm just a interested party. So always a teacher. Deb sits there and marks. Or she's just sitting there and marking stuff, killing time. For a while I had the RE teacher. That made for quite a different vibe. So they're comparing basically they're measuring the output of the sound pressure sensor, trying to figure out how to calibrate it to work out who's loudest. Wasn't a good look. Supervising teacher popped out of the room to go get a coffee. Teacher walks back in. There's a storeroom in the corner of the classroom. It'll be it's a Harry Potter cupboard. I'm standing outside the cupboard with a laptop. There's a cable going from the laptop round the edge of the door, and there's this horrible screaming noise coming from inside the cupboard. And I'm standing there going, this can't look good. And one of the other students said, don't worry, ma'am, it's for science. Turned out that the one on the left screamed the loudest. She basically took the sensor right off the end of what it can measure. But it's moments like that, it gives the students the confidence to do stuff and give it a go. Another student had NASA stickers on her laptop. So we built a rocket. It's real simple. It's designed to fall apart. So 1.25 litre, Commander diesels, bookbinding strips. The fins are made of, cut out of the tops of ice cream containers. Thank you, plastic box, for the plastic container for the telemetry. This device sends 3 axes of acceleration up to 0.5 K, and there's an accelerometer in there. The student was working out the ratio of the mass of the rocket to the reaction mass, basically the water that went in, and we explored how much water it took to get the best bang for your buck. So I brought the kitchen scales in, she's weighing all the parts, and it made me smile because she actually totted the numbers up, not using a calculator. Whiteboard desks are great, but if you've got a school blouse with white cuffs, parents must hate me. One girl went home and it was like red on that cuff and blue on that cuff, and there was green up there, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to meet your mum. The accelerometer is mounted on a little round circle, wooden circle. Glued it in, great. Rocket crashed. That's the AAA battery which powers the telemetry device. That's the damage done by a cable tie when you smack the rocket into the concrete path outside the teacher's study when they're having a staff meeting. Worst possible time to do something dumb.
Pleased it wasn't with you?
Yeah. The other thing is the student, she'd built a rocket herself, and she used a bike pump. And for those of you who are old enough, more power is always the answer. We had a compressor that you use for inflating car tyres. Went an awful long way. We put a rocket off the hockey field over the back fence of a house in Winchester Street. It also makes for some spectacular failures when you push the bung in too far. If you remember the Wile E. Coyote, where they fire the musket and suddenly it's all folded back like that, it does that and you can't hear anything for 15 minutes. Some students really get it. This student was always listening to music on her phone. So she built herself an MP3 player. It's got a 5-button UI. It's got play, pause, next track, previous track, volume up, volume down. Displays the current track and the current time. That's a real-time clock. It's powered by a battery. Got to the end of the term. It was working. We blew up 3 of those during the class, and we didn't figure it out. Some of the students were using the earphones from their phones, and if you plug in one of those, because they have the mic wide up, we blew up the card, which was painful. We got to the end of the class, and she said, I am so pleased this worked, but I am so over you too. Because it's a school, and it's a girls' school, I have to be very careful about the music. No 9-inch nails, nothing like that. You two strike me right. Nothing offensive there. Sometimes you've got to be innovative, or in the face of budget constraints, you improvise. This is a turbidity sensor out of an industrial dishwasher. An industrial dishwasher recycles the water until it's too dirty. And then it pumps it out and brings some new water in. They're about $20 a pop, US. Some of you might recognise this. This is from the rear bumper of your car. It's an ultrasonic Ranger. It's waterproof. It'll give you the distance with sub-centimetre accuracy out to a couple of metres. So what can you do with those? Well, if your family owns a farm next to a lake and you're sick and tired of townies whining about water quality, you build a water quality sensor. This is a tube, and floating in the tube is the turbidity sensor. We also take trips down to the hard materials department to drill holes and ream things out, run the lathe, stuff like that. Basically all the tools that I'm approved to use, because I haven't done the training in all of them. It's surprising how expensive these UPVC resistant boxes are. The students knew this as the Pipette Bomb, because it's a small pipe bomb. There was a standing joke about how it needed like a countdown LED display on it. The idea with this particular kit was you used it for measuring river levels. So ultrasonic Ranger, measuring the distance to the top of the water, good. turbidity sensor floating in the water, measuring the turbidity sort of 10 centimetres below the surface, and 3 temperature sensors up and down the tube. There's a wireless link back to the farmhouse, and then it uploads the data to Adafruit.io and draws some nice graphs. Funny story, the tube is 200 centimetres long. When a student was getting the shopping list, she wrote 20 centimetres down. When she went to buy the kit at a plumbing supplies place, she didn't notice the dot. She said she got some real weird looks standing out on the bus in a school uniform with a bright pink backpack and a 2 metre long 50 mil across length of pipe over her shoulder. One student was interested in ag. I always try and leverage what I do off someone else's topic. You know, I'm looking for some eco warriors currently because I have a whole bunch of eco environmental sensors. This is a solar-powered soil moisture, temperature and humidity sensor with a LoRaWAN module. It's got a range of about 5 Ks. It's designed to go in an orchard to help the orchardists monitor the temperature and humidity in the canopy to work out what the best time to apply spray for blight is. You want to apply a minimum of spray possible because you're organic and you're only allowed to, the spray is copper-based. And to stop heavy metals settling in your soil, you want to apply as little as possible. And this allows them to predict the best time to a spray for blight. You take another trip down to the hard materials department and you build a box, you glue a solar panel on the front, you put a bigger antenna on it because the house is farther away from the trees than you thought. You use cable glands to keep the water out and a hydrostatic vent so that when it heats up and cools off, it doesn't fill with water. It'll most probably survive a year or two in a Canterbury winter, which is pretty good. It's powered overnight by the battery. It'll run for 3 days without any sunlight. So if there's no sunlight for 3 days, it is the end of days. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are riding up Morehouse Ave. So why do I do this? I'm a contractor. I make money by selling my time. I do this because stuff like this. A couple of years ago, I was seriously ill, like ambulance, hospital, head and CAT scanner ill. And I got a card from my students saying, get well soon. Little diversion. There's nothing like talking to a neurosurgeon, and the neurosurgeon says, the odds of this, blah, 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 and I went, blah, blah, blah. And he said, you seem to have a fairly good understanding of statistics and odds. And I went, yes, I used to write gambling software. And he went, that'll explain it. Sometimes your students succeed beyond your wildest dreams. The student who did the orchard monitoring project, she submitted a project for university scholarship. She got a scholarship. That puts her in the top 3% of students who submitted for that subject in the whole of New Zealand. We met, her mum and I met afterwards to celebrate this victory, and I got a coffee card from every coffee shop where we'd met to work on the project. Always meet in a public space, always leave after the student has left. And she wrote me a note, and that was very cool. The coffee cards didn't last very long. I'm pretty confident that we can start younger than most people think. This is at Waimari. My son went to Waimari Primary School. This student was quite chuffed when, don't think you can see it there. She got one of the pulse rate monitors, plugged it in, hitched it up, and she was just gobsmacked when the light on the device was flashing in sync with her pulse. So I reckon we can start a wee bit younger. It's most probably a wee bit premature to stuff the pipeline at primary school, but considering the amount of attrition, it's probably not a bad idea. Okay, this is going to be awkward for some of us. How many professions do you know where they've made a movie about how crap it is for women in that industry? I'm struggling. There's not been a documentary about Russell McVeigh. I hope there are no lawyers in the audience. I'm well screwed. Yeah. This is a really good documentary. It talks about the disadvantages and the impact on women's outlook in the computer industry. It's a pretty unpleasant watch. I've been in the industry, I wrote my first professional software in 1988. It's uncomfortable. It's $4 to rent on Amazon, $11 to buy. Okay, last slide. You'll notice there was only words on the intro and outro. I've been doing this for 7, maybe 8 years. I reckon I've most probably got another 3 years in me. I can most probably do it for 10 years before I run out of steam. I'm walking back, I made some notes. I don't try and teach the kids how to code. I teach them like professional programmers. They generate the example, they modify the example, they figure out how to modify the example with Stack Overflow and Google, just like real developers. I got in trouble. I was doing a consulting gig, and someone said to me, "What's this code?" And I went, "Did you copy that from the questions or the answers in Stack Overflow?" There was a very pregnant pause after that. It's all about the confidence to give it a go. I also help at Burnside. I also run some classes at St Andrews. I was a judge on the Microsoft Imagine Cup, which is a global competition for school students. After my trip to the neurologist and the neurosurgeon and the oncologist and a whole bunch of other people, I decided that I was only going to work 20 to 30 hours a week and become a house husband. My wife is a teacher. She's very tolerant. She puts up with this and doesn't look at the credit card bills. That's my story. Any questions? Oh, before we get to questions, if you're interested in this topic, some books. Technically wrong. Summary of this, lots of algorithmic bias. You use machine learning to figure out what employees you've already got. You end up employing more of the same nerdy white guys with puzzles. They're good at puzzles. Is there anyone from Trimble here? Okay, let's go. I got interviewed for a job at Trimble. Is Heidi Griffiths here? No. Heidi sent me for a job interview at Trimble. They had a puzzle. I didn't solve the puzzle. Didn't get the job. Went back as a contracting consultant 7 or 8 years later. Said, "What about the puzzle?" They said, "Oh, we don't use that anymore. We got a monoculture. We now employ more for balance than people who can solve puzzles." I've had a lot of puzzles. One company said to me, "How do you express 7 in base negative 2? I went 11011. I've had people say to me, "Oh, can you do this test?" I said, "It's just to develop a high pissing contest. Go and look at my GitHub repo. You can see what I've been doing for the last 7 years. I can't be bothered." They offered me a job and I said no. I said, "I'm going to be a house husband, it's way more interesting." With this one, doctor, she joins a gym. Her swipe card, like a 24-hour gym, wouldn't let her into the men's changing room because it assumed she was a guy because she was a doctor. Bad. This one, how many of you know that Volvo invented the lap and diagonal seatbelt? So Volvo invented the lap and diagonal seatbelt. Great thing, saved millions of lives. Problem, women tend to sit higher because they're shorter to see over the bonnet. They tend to sit closer to the steering wheel because their arms are not as long. And the seats are padded with foam, which is harder because it's designed for a heavier weight. So you're more likely to get whiplash. So how do I express this without getting myself in a shit ton of trouble? Your chest is a different shape. So quite often the seatbelt is not in the optimal position. Also, if you're about to be a mum, it's even worse. Part of the contributing factor to this is until recently, crash test dummies were all guys. They were 76 kgs and 1.8 metres tall. I'm going to survive. Great. Problem is, women are not 80% guys, because that was their next cut at building a female crash test dummy. They found that women tended to be in the passenger seat more, and they were 71% more likely to be injured in the same crash than a guy. Guys crash more too. But programmed inequality, one of the previous speaker mentioned ICL. ICL were a British computer company, world leaders. They screwed it up, majorly. Men and women, 2 different pay scales. Women's pay scale capped out earlier, harder for them to rise to management, and as soon as they got married, they were put on temporary contract. Dumbest thing they could do. Why would you immediately reduce the impact of 50% of your intellectual capital? I'm sounding like a marketing guy. I'll stop now. Any questions? Question?
Microphone, please.
Hello, Carly.
Hello, Kelly.
You were covering math, electronics and coding and other topics. Do you think that we lose students because we focus on trying to teach them tech instead of solving problems using tech?
Yes.
Thanks, Kelly.
Coding is not a means to an end. Learning how to program in Python or whatever language, it's not a lot of use. Coding is a team sport. You need to play nice with others. You need to be able to understand other people's business domains. Over the years, I've worked in some really weird things. I can black start a hydroelectric power station. I can run a gambling site with in-play betting. That's really good until the Russian mafia get involved. And there are only 3 or 4 people in New Zealand who are allowed to do gambling: the casinos, Lotto, and the scratchies. You had instructions about what to do when the DIA arrived, but our gambling licence was a little plaque outside of lawyers in London. The Russian mafia would break this. There's 3 outcomes for a soccer match: win, lose, and game abandoned. So what the Russian mafia would do would kick the door in the nearest substation and smash the gear until the lights went out. So, more questions? Any more questions?
Who else? Another one here, please, Vaughan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a software architect. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I'm looking at schools, and some schools go like, oh, you know, they use Chromebooks and what have you from the get-go, etc. Other goes like, oh, no, we wait, you know, for the first, I don't know how many years. What do you think, when is the right time to expose kids to computers and programming?
My children are not representative of that. I think that some schools have better programs than others. I cannot comment beyond that. My wife teaches Digitech at a school, and different schools, different focus. I don't think that Digitech programming should be taught solely for the sake of programming. I think you should weave it into other subjects, because that's the real world. My son plays Minecraft a lot. He's programming Minecraft plugins in Lua. He's written a casino. He's built a casino. He's building an implementation of blackjack in Lua, and he wants me to build an Azure backend so that he can run the bank and people can deposit diamonds and make withdrawals and bet on games. I'm just relieved I get some free Azure time. I have no idea. Any more questions?
Who else?
Oh, down the back. It's quite dangerous being a middle-aged balding guy talking about women in tech. I hope you take pity on me if I screw up. Yes?
It sounds like you're doing this on your own. Do you have a website or any directions to go and do some of the little projects that you've shown tonight? Where do you start with?
It's just me.
How do we clone Bren?
You don't. You really don't. It takes 7 years. You get a student in the 4th form, they're thinking about NCA. It takes 3 years. It's not one of those things where you can just walk in, deliver a class and walk out. I get emails saying, oh, I'm trying to build this by baseball launcher. What do you think I need to do? And I'm going, well, you most probably use a PID loop to make them rotate at the same speed, and you'll need telemetry because their speed will vary when you drop the ball and stuff like that. It takes a long-term personal commitment. You find something that interests you because otherwise you'll end up hating it, and you go and work with teachers to do it. I failed a lot at the beginning, really failed. Some teachers are really receptive to it, others aren't. Your mileage may vary.
Last one.
Oh, there's one here as well.
Typically enough in the front row. Vaughan, down here, please. Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Bryn. You talked about the one student, the very successful student. Do you have any data on how many of the girls have gone into some kind of tech after school?
There's a couple a year. The yield is not great. But I'm competing with drama, sport, stuff like that. It's a real niche thing. I don't see how you can scale it well. And the sad thing was the student who went to university to do computer science, which I thought was great, bailed and went to information science because it was just too nerdy. So why do I waste all of this effort over years and years and years to get half a dozen students who go to higher education? Because I'm a dumbass.
Half a dozen's better than none.
Yeah, but then they get to industry and it goes to hell. Right at the very
last
back.
one.
It'd be
Last two, maybe. Go.
It'd be really good if a woman asked me a question.
Yeah. Why are all the boys asking questions?
I'm sorry, I can't be a woman quickly. I don't know if I missed it at the start, but what sort of age group were you working with?
Mainly these days it's high school. Year
That's quite right.
11, 12, 13.
And all of these HERDECs and Watsits and things that you supplying them with, is this stuff that you've built up over time, where you're just finding it on the fly when they need it, or where does that all come from?
Some is left over from a previous thing I was involved in. We had a fire which killed a lot of the gear, but I dug through the smouldering wreckage and pulled out stuff. Some I fund out of my own pocket. It can hurt because I've got CO2 sensors over there. We're doing a project about measuring CO2 sensors, CO2 levels in classrooms, because when it gets to 1,000 parts per million, you might as well just give up. You're just going to face plant into the desk and not remember anything. CO2 sensors are $60 US a pop. Particulate sensors, got a project coming up at Tafty, want to put particulate sensors on by the bus exchange, monitor when buses are coming and going. They're $30 a pop. I'm just relieved that the credit card bill is not shared.
Last one.
Question.
Hooray, female.
Oh, two. Please.
I'm just thinking, from your own observation over the years, working with different schools, what other things you reckon that the schools are doing wrong, or what other things the school can be doing a bit better about technology in general?
Oh.
Just be honest, please.
How long have you got?
The names and places have been anonymised to protect. Some schools do it more integrated. I'm trying to convince more schools to shuffle computing into the, say, the ag department or the physics department, things like that. There are a couple of schools I work with, and how many of you know my partner? Okay. The school she teaches at, which shall remain nameless for the purposes of this discussion, has a reasonably good program. They try and get female students to come in. I've worked at another school, which will definitely remain nameless, where they don't even have a Digitech stream. I've worked with another school where the Digitech stream is pretty hopeless. I've worked with one stream where they try and do integrated learning, and that's really cool. They do projects which span multiple departments. Pay attention when you do the parental tour is about my best thing. In my point of view with St Margaret's, it's really weird. One night I was running a class and they were doing a show and tell to parents, and I looked out and there was a friend of mine's younger brother and his wife walking past, and I'm thinking, well. So, any more questions?
I think we're going to stop there. It's getting on a bit. Look, Bryn's raised some difficult subjects for us to confront, really, as an industry. The recent digital skills report says we have about 23% of people employed in the sector are females. That's just not good enough. We're not encouraging enough girls, or boys for that matter, but particularly girls, to consider an interest in STEM subjects at school. We're not encouraging them to pursue that study at higher levels, and a lot of our employers are just not set up to be particularly welcoming to bringing females into the sector. That's just not good enough. So, quick plug, Tech Summit, we will have a panel session which is partly about gender diversity, but it's also about other aspects of diversity in the workplace. We at Canterbury Tech, and in my other roles with the High Tech Trust and so on, we really want to promote diversity and inclusion. Our audience tonight has been a bit unusual for us, quite honestly, in that we have a higher proportion of females in the room than we normally do. I'd really like to see that being the norm rather than the exception. So, in closing, I'd like to thank Bryn and all the work that he's doing. I'd like to see more people trying to do this sort of work and encourage young girls particularly to consider a career in tech, or at least an interest in STEM subjects. So thank you, Bryn, for all you do. There was more. What's that one about?
Project for measuring the power consumption. Local company, really great company. I went in, I had to slit the insulation of this and pull the phase wire out so I could put the power cable on. I went to a local company called TARDIS, and I said, look, I'm teaching kids how to code. And the guy running it said, mate, you cannot take that into a classroom. So if you press the button again.
There's more.
So he made me, his company made me these nice boxes with the lid screwed on tight and Loctited with the clamp where no little fingers could get at it. So.
Safe as.
There you go. Here endeth the rant.
Thanks, Bryn. Okay, to wrap up, thank you all for coming this evening. Hi, online audience, if there's any left. Thanks for joining us. Next month, 3rd of August, we're delighted to team up with Papa Hauora and the Christchurch Health Innovation Network. Keep an eye open for this. Thank you. Stick around, do some more networking, or go home. Your choice.